Lewis and Clark expedition in 1805 were among the first white men to see mule deer and the first to describe them. They first encountered mule deer in South Dakota's Big Bend country. Captain Meriwether Lewis reported, "We rarely found mule deer in any except a rough country." Historically, mule deer population have undergone some gradual buildups and rather abrupt declines. This phenomenon has been studied extensively, but no clear-cut reason for the changes has been determined. These population fluctuations can occur over vast areas of deer's range or limited to certain localities. Factors involved may be weather, forage supplies, diseases, too liberal hunting seasons, habitat destruction, or a combination of some or all. Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Utah, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Nevada all reported peak deer harvests occurred from 1960 to 1963. A slow decline occurred into the late 1970s. For example, in Montana from 1970 to 1975, hunter success fell from the normal 80% to 44%. Presently, mule deer population have recovered to fairly high levels over much of the Rocky Mountain range, and hunter success again has approached 70 to 80%. The Rocky Mountain mule deer inhabits a vast tract of real estate. The extreme northern limits of its range touches the southern Yukon, while to the south it encompasses northern Arizona and New Mexico. In the United States, its range on the west reaches into central Oregon and Washington and nearly all of Nevada. On the east, it extends into eastern Montana, Colorado, and Wyoming. This area is approximately 1,550 miles in length and 932 miles in width. It almost defies the imagination to describe the wide variations of climate conditions under which the Rocky Mountain mule deer survives. Its climatic tolerance is unsurpassed by any other mammal. It can survive weeks of sub-zero temperatures and summers of sweltering heat, provided there is adequate forage and wind protection. Seasonal migrations are necessary for deer to escape deep snow and locate food. These can vary from under 2 miles to over 30, or not at all during mild winters. Mule deer bucks average 20% heavier than does, with a good buck weighing in at 300 pounds. Mule deer bucks also have highly developed skin glands, but unlike whitetail bucks, their glands probably don't have as great a socializing, communicating value. The most important of the glands is the tarsal gland, located on the inside of the rear foot at the back joint, and is functional during a rut, when the buck performs his rubbed urinating phenomenon. A typical mule deer buck's antlers are shaped in a unique fashion. After the main beam leaves the skull, it forks into 2 sub-main beams. Each of these beams will fork, so the mule deer buck under normal situations will have 4 points to an antler. Brow tines are usually absent or very small when compared to a whitetail's antlers. Occasionally, a buck will grow points in an abnormal position. These bucks carry what is called a non-typical rack. This magnificent buck is such an animal. A buck will grow its first set of antlers at 18 months of age. The antlers begin their growth early in April and are shed about the middle of January. It is still a mystery how the buck is able to grow and harden such a mass of bone in such a short time. It has been estimated that the rate of antler growth is 3 to 7 times that of skeletal growth. The new bony antler growth is covered with a modified extension of normal skin called velvet. It is believed increased testosterone levels choke off the blood supply to the velvet, causing it to shed in late August. It appears that the main function of antlers is to provide the major visual stimulus for social interaction during the rut or breeding season. This huge buck will score over 195 Boone and Crockett points, making him eligible for the record book. Bucks of this caliber are rarely photographed. Here are 2 more huge bucks. Animals such as these are exceptional trophies. and may be seen only once in a lifetime of hunting. Does seem to have the ability to recognize a superior set of antlers and select that buck to mate with. Since the genetically strongest bucks carry the biggest antlers, she assures her fawn will inherit his characteristics. Mule deer are ruminants like cattle, and their digestive structure allows them to feed on a wide variety of vegetation types. This enhances their ability to survive the severe Rocky Mountain winters as they migrate downward into differing plant types, changing as they go. Mule deer are selective feeders, meaning through smell they can select the most nutritious types of forage. The deer's long pointed face and flexible lips also enable it to nip off individual leaves and buds from plants, leaving the less nutritious parts. Mule deer also eat fruits, mushrooms, berries, acorns, and various grass types. There have been reported over 788 kinds of plants eaten by mule deer. Browse-type plants, such as shrubs, buds, and trees, tend to be more available during the winter because of snow depth. The quality of the nutrients is important for reproduction, body maintenance, and antler growth. Understanding the behavior of deer, why they do what they do, is important to achieving a successful hunt. Mule deer have 4 main influences in their lives: food, reproduction, cover, and human disturbance. And the weather. All mule deer hunting strategies are related in some way to taking advantage of and understanding how these 4 areas affect mule deer behavior. This video will extensively explore all these areas, but it must be noted field experience and season of hunting are necessary to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. Unlike white-tailed deer, mule deer are not territorial. Because of irregular distribution of forage in a mountainous alpine environment and the occurrence of deep snowfalls, mule deer roam over large home ranges, seeking favorable habitat. This makes predicting their movements and locating deer difficult at times. Therein is the hunter's challenge. Where deer rest or feed is dictated by weather. For instance, if the wind is strong and cold, deer are found most often in pockets of calm air below the crest of hills, in gullies, or in dense forest cover. Sudden changes in snow depth or hardness sometimes cause abrupt changes in the deer's location. The distance traveled could be a few hundred yards or a few miles. Understanding normal body movements and postures versus alarm and fight postures are necessary to successfully hunt mule deer. Deer have comfort movements such as tail flicks, droopy ears, slow walking, relaxed feeding. Any sudden deviation from normal relaxed motions such as head alert, ears forward, staring, stiff-legged steps, rigid body causes alarm. The stalking hunter must be aware of these posture changes and adjust his hunt accordingly, or his buck will be gone. Observing lots of deer over a period of time is helpful. Mule deer are highly sensitive to human disturbance and are fast learners through experience. Remember, man is the ultimate predator, and deer have long since learned this. Therefore, deer tend to stay close to steep, rocky slopes, brushy cover, and dark timber. When a mule deer bolts from danger, it often demonstrates a characteristic peculiar to the species. It is their stiff-legged, bouncy gait, known as stotting. This gait serves several functions. The sound alerts other deer. It's an energy-efficient means to rapidly ascend steep hillsides, leaving predators behind. Bouncing permits erratic, rapid changes in direction, enabling the escaping deer a better field of vision at the height of its bound. Stopping is an interesting anti-predator strategy of mule deer and indicates extreme alarm and probably long-range flight. As previously mentioned, knowing the whereabouts of mule deer from day to day may be unpredictable because of their being non-territorial. For instance, a rutting buck in search of does engages in random running, looking for does in estrus and investigating other bucks. Therefore, tracking a buck or trying to intercept him by walking through the woods is often futile and frustrating. The secluded meadow where does are feeding as they move to lower elevations can be an excellent spot to take a stand. You can bet a mature breeding buck will appear sooner or later. This is a surefire technique in the Northern Rockies, as we will show later. The key is locating areas preferred by does. In severe winters, deer may be forced to live in 10% of its summer range. In the early season, while the weather is still mild, the deer feed at night. Shortly after dawn, they retire to deep timber or shady, rocky overhangings to pass away the hours of heat. They then reappear at dark to begin their night's feeding. Locating feeding deer early, intercepting them as they retire to the shady bed areas, or stalking them in their beds are all good ideas. Stalking mule deer bucks in their beds is a very demanding and exciting technique, as Dwight Shue will soon demonstrate. As with all members of the deer family, the really big muley buck becomes most vulnerable during the cycle of rut, which begins in earnest around November 10th and ends the first few days of December. There is intense social interaction among bucks and does during this period. Skin glands, urine, and body posture all come into play. Like white-tailed deer, mule deer during the rut will rub urinate. Mule deer, however, since they are roamers with no stable home range, rub urinate as a dominance display. The urine odor indicates the dominance position of each buck. Mule deer are not known to make scrapes. Mule deer also smell each other's tarsal and metatarsal glands to learn about the social status of other deer. The following is a rarely filmed confrontation between two rutting bucks with a doe between them. A big, swollen-necked rutting buck cruises the haunts of the does, looking for one that's in heat. He finds a smaller buck tending a receptive doe who is positioned between them. The bigger buck saunters towards the smaller buck, staring him down and displaying his bigger body. The doe awaits the outcome. The dominant buck hunches his back and pulls both back legs underneath his belly and prepares to urinate on his tarsal glands, which are located on the inside of both hocks. This act demonstrates his dominance. The doe moves her tail to the side and squats slightly. The lesser buck, totally outclassed, averts the bigger buck's eye contact by turning his head. He signals his total submission by starting to feed and avoids physical contact. The breeding buck then returns to the doe, which has since urinated, and checks her urine. This will tell him her state of receptiveness. Rutting mule deer bucks frequently horn brush, often for long periods of time. It's an auditory signal of male dominance. A buck horns the brush, stops, and listens. A nearby buck may rake the brush in reply. Having once located each other, the two bucks may move toward each other to investigate. It's a characteristic unique to mule deer. During courtship, the buck follows the does to stimulate them to urinate. After the doe voids, the buck smells the urine to check the doe's state of estrus. He then performs a lip curl, and a special organ in the roof of his mouth checks for certain pheromones in the urine, which will tell the buck if the doe is ready to breed. This serves to conserve the buck's energy and prevents depleting precious winter fat reserves. Otherwise, he would chase does that are not ready to breed, instead of concentrating on an ovulating receptive doe. Once a receptive doe is identified, he will tend her until she permits copulation. It is during this entire rutting courtship process that the buck's guard is relaxed. They often become totally unaware of their surroundings and become extremely vulnerable to the hunter. It is at this time that mule deer bucks are at peak levels of mobility and exposure. A rutting buck usually returns year after year to localities where he previously found does. If he becomes unable to defend his position, he becomes an opportunistic wanderer on into his old age. At the conclusion of rut, the bucks go into a state of rest and hiding. They move into heavy cover, and the bucks disappear from the doe's home ranges. Since mule deer must survive long, difficult winters, often on marginal forage, they tend to conserve energy by limiting movement where possible and feeding where snow is soft and not too deep. Snow depths in excess of 17 inches tend to inhibit a deer's ability to feed, and that area of their range is lost. Feeding often occurs on south-facing hillsides, a thick lodgepole forest, or behind boulders and tree trunks where snow depths are minimal. We will now take you mule deer hunting in 3 very different areas of the Rocky Mountains. Putting some thought into the time of year, air temperature, snow depths, and availability of forage will aid the hunter in locating animals. First, nationally acclaimed bow hunter and author Dwight Shue, Dale Burke, and outfitter Mike Gerber will take us on a trophy mule deer hunt into the high, open country of the Humboldt Range of northern Nevada. Next, George Batis, expert mule deer hunter, guides Steve Turner and Rod Hubner into the very rugged Salmon River breaks of Idaho. Each take very nice bucks. And finally, Ed Wolf, author, hunter, and expert wildlife photographer, hunts the huge bucks of Montana's northern Rockies with his 15-year-old son, Scott. The Humboldt Mountains of northern Nevada are very rugged and steep. Hunting is done between 8,500 and 10,000 feet elevation. The country is covered in low brush and pockets of aspen groves and chest-high scrub. Large populations of trophy-class bucks call this region home. Mike's camp was set in a small aspen grove, well below the hunting area.
Load up a hot bath in the creek would probably be all right.
Oh, I hope so.
Dale,
Let me pull up the chair here.
Dwight,
Sure.
and Mike left camp each day well before daylight and returned well after dark. A comfortable camp makes this kind of tiring schedule possible.
Sooner the better.
Dwight has developed a very successful technique for hunting open country bucks. At daylight, he's up on the ridges, glassing likely lonely basins. He will first locate one or several bucks. Often in Nevada, he saw 40 to 60 bucks in a day. Dwight selects the buck he wants and watches him closely until he beds, usually around 8 to 9 in the morning. For 2 to 3 more hours, he studies the best route to stalk the buck, notes the position of other deer in relation to his stalking route, and generally let the buck settle into a state of total relaxation. About noon to 1 o'clock, he begins a stalk which may last 3 to 4 hours. He plans to execute only 1 stalk per day while hunting open country bucks. We will now take you through 3 stalks. The stalks will be periodically interrupted to allow Dwight to demonstrate a point of technique.
The whole idea of hunting mule deer to me is hunting open country where you can see the deer. And you can see in country like this, you've got to have pretty good eyes to spot a deer clear on the far side of these big basins. Yet this is the kind of country that's ideal for bow hunting, in my opinion, because you can spot deer from a long ways, and you can spot them before they spot you, and that right there is the very heart of any hunting system, is seeing the game before the game sees you. That's where the value of optical equipment comes in. You simply cannot hunt this type of country without really good optics, and that's the first most basic kind of optics to me is the smaller binoculars. I use 7 by 35, some hunters use 8 by 40, some hunters use 10 by 40s, but you have to have a good high quality pair of binoculars, and I stress the high quality part. And if I had my druthers and I had to make a choice, I would put a lot of money into my binoculars and buy an inexpensive bow rather than putting all my money into the bow and buying a cheap pair of binoculars. The smaller binoculars generally aren't enough to spot deer at really long ranges though, so you need an auxiliary optics, and most hunters would go with a spotting scope. And I like this small lightweight model that I can pack with me. I like to do a lot of backcountry hunting. The really most important part of using a spotting scope is to have it stable. You have to have a good tripod with it. Now this small folding tripod I can put in my backpack. It's fairly lightweight, and when I can set it up so that I can bring the scope right directly to my eye, and I can sit up comfortably, and I can look through the scope for hours on end without tiring my eyes. I think one important point of using a scope, and a lot of people say it causes bad eye strain, to me the important thing is to not squint an eye, but to cover this eye, to look through with your dominant eye, and then cover your other eye, and that way you don't have to squint and tighten your face muscles, and you can spot comfortably for many hours. I feel that the most optimum power is probably the 20 power on the spotting scope. The value of waiting a while for the buck to bed is that by 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning the sun comes out and the thermals start drifting uphill and the wind becomes reliable, and then you can count on it to be blowing uphill for at least 3 or 4 or 5 hours. And that is the most important part of making a stalk, is keeping the wind in your favor. No cover-up scent, no amount of washing your clothes or your body is enough out here in this steep country where you're hiking all day long. You have to keep the wind in your favor. So that's the number one point in making a stalk. I think the next most important part of making a stalk perhaps is camouflage, and I go full bore on my camouflage. I want everything camouflaged. My bow, I use the Easton pre-camouflaged anodized arrows. I camouflage all my clothing, of course, and I camouflage my face, and I camouflage my hands with gloves so that when I'm ready to shoot, the buck cannot see me. And a lot of the times I will be right out in the midst of a wide open area like this, fully visible to the buck, and yet with this type of camouflage, he will not see me. I've had many deer look right straight at me from as close as 20 yards and not even pay any attention to me. So I think camouflage is extremely important. I think one of the most important parts of stalking is silent movement. Obviously, that's important in any hunting. And the way I ensure silence in stalking is to remove my boots. And I don't do this until I start getting pretty close. I'll try to get within 100 yards of a deer or something like that. And then when I get within that critical hearing range of the deer, I'll take my boots off and slip on an extra little pair of wool socks that I carry with me to cushion my feet and keep my good socks clean. And with these socks on, I can walk as quietly as a cat across any kind of gravel or rock or through sticks and dry leaves. They cushion your feet, they cushion the gravel so that it doesn't make noise, and because it hurts your feet if you move too fast, you wearing these socks guarantees that you move slowly, and that's very important in making a good stalk. Now as I'm approaching a buck,
Dwight will stalk a buck in his bed, demonstrating his technique.
I can see Dwight up there. He's starting his stalk. Pointing right on you, good now. Gives you a dry throat watching him, doesn't it? Yeah, I think he's about 300 yards above his buck, and he's already hunkered down. Just moving real slow. What's he doing? Is he glassing it? Lots of glassing. Lots of glassing. He won't start his stalking feet till he's within about 100 yards of him.
Dwight is now closing in on the brush patch to the right of the rock where the buck is bedded down. He uses 3-point support and slides slowly along, always keeping his eye on the buck. As he completes his stalk, every technique Dwight has outlined is put into practice. He uses his binoculars to monitor the buck's attitude. It's very important to anticipate the animal's reaction to any disturbance. He continues to stalk closer and closer. Dwight draws his bow first. Then, with a mouth call, he mimics a fawn's bleat, hoping to get the buck to stand. A second bleat causes the buck to step forward out of his bed for an open shot. As he draws his bow, he accidentally pulls the arrow off the string. This causes him to lose his concentration and miss the shot. The buck, knowing something's not right, bounds away, still unaware of Dwight's presence. We will now show an incredible scene in which Dale Burke stalks to within 10 yards of a bedded buck. The last part of the stalk will be narrated by Dwight Shue as he actually watches from across the canyon the drama unfold. Dale has spotted his buck and watches patiently until it beds. As the buck settles in, so does Dale. He'll wait an hour and a half before he begins his stalk. A system of hand signals was worked out between he and Dwight, just in case the buck moves his bedding site as the sun warms the canyon. As luck would have it, the buck rises and moves. This complicates Dale's stalk because the buck was out of his range of vision when it moved. The buck has found a cooler location in a shady brush patch. Dale's stalk is more difficult with the buck's move.
Great Scott, he's starting to get close now. Look at that. You can see the deer and Dale in the same view now. Oh, take it slow, Dale. Oh man, I hope he uses his binoculars there. Look at that. The buck's just snoozing away and Dale's just sneaking along. It's exciting now. Come on, Dale. He's got his arrow knocked. I don't know if he'll be able to see the buck around that bush, though. That's the problem. Boy, that buck looks like he's just sacked out, snoring away over there. To your right, Dale, to your right. Let's give him a buck straight across now. Give him a straight across. Yeah, he's gonna take it, he's gonna look at us. Let's give him straight across to the buck. Get over there. Keep him real close. Jack, keep him close. Did he follow? He doesn't know whether to believe us. Yeah, that's right. He's got it. He saw it. Oh man. Now's when you gotta take your time. One fast move and boy, you're dead. Oh, you need He needs to take those shoes off in that gravel. That's bad. He'll never make it in there. Boy, you just know something's gonna happen here pretty soon. Is he close? Yeah, he's getting close. How close is he, Dwight? Well, he's 35 to 40 yards there now, I'd say. He's getting within range, though. When he gets within around that boulder, he's gonna be within range there pretty soon. He's within range, he just can't see the deer is his problem. He's taking it good and slow though, that's the whole idea. Just 1 inch at a time. I'll bet his heart's starting to beat down there a little bit too, 'cause he knows he's close. Keep your eyes open, Dale. It's up to your right a little bit. Jeez. Should we wait? Something's gonna happen here pretty soon. Don't do it, Jack. Oh, jeez. Jeez, he's right there. I know it. He's about 30 yards now. Oh, he's not any more than 30 yards at most. Oh, Dale. Keep your eyes open, Dale. Oh, gee. Oh, man. Something's gonna happen here pretty soon. Dale still can't see him, I think. Oh, no. Dale. That deer still doesn't know he's there. Careful. Look. The deer isn't right there. Deer. Look. Dale. Dale, look. Dale, look. Oh, no, look at the deer. He's looking at him. He's dropping his belly down. Oh, no. The deer's looking at him. Give him a very close signal. Sure. He's right there. Get your bow out. Give me a real tight signal. I did. Oh, there he goes. He's turning back. He's turning back. Yeah. Dale, get your bow up. Shoot. Look at that. He's right there. Dale, shoot him. Shoot. Oh, shit. Talk to the mic. Shoot him. Oh, Dale. Shoot. Oh, there he goes. Oh, he didn't get the shot at him. He never shot, did he? Oh, gee. He couldn't have been 10 feet from him. Oh, no.
Intrigued by Dwight's methods, the camera crew, Gary Holmes and Ed Wolf, tried a stock of their own, complete with 60 pounds of camera gear strapped to their backs. The results were interesting. 5 good muley bucks were located bedded on a windswept open ridge. There was almost no cover, but the wind was favorable. Slowly, inch by inch, the distance to the bucks was closed until one's antlers could be seen at about 50 yards. At 35 yards, the buck's sixth sense tells him something's not right. He rises, still not aware he's being watched, until he looks right into the camera. Watch as the other bucks, taking their cues from the suddenly alert body posture of the standing buck, themselves stand and flee in unison. You too can make these types of things happen with patience and good techniques.
the time primarily I stalk. That would be my bread and butter technique, but I've also found that the anticipating where the deer would go, trying to position myself either where they'll feed into me or where other hunters might push them into me, works pretty well too.
Dwight will now show the position intercept idea behind open country hunting. As it turned out, Mike and Dale stalked the bedded buck while Dwight looped to the head of the basin.
You can see the big one. You can see his antler tips. You see the great big rock with the aspens growing right out of him. They're just beyond that. In fact, you can see a spike's head sticking out of there. Okay. And the big one's just to the right of that spike.
He took a stand on a natural deer trail leading over the ridge. The thought was that if Mike and Dale bumped the bucks, they would exit the basin and pass by Dwight. As you will see, the plan works to perfection.
In right mind, I can't see the antlers now.
Dwight signals for Mike and Dale to begin the stalk. Dale and Mike's stalk failed, and the buck spooked right to Dwight. The deer hesitate at 60 yards and then keep coming. Dwight draws his bow. At 40 yards, they pause. Dwight, bow ready, is absolutely motionless and undetected by the deer. At 20 yards, they pass by Dwight, still not seeing him. He shoots this buck just as he leaves the picture. The arrow passes clear through the deer's body, lacerating the liver. He tracks the wounded buck. Moving carefully along the steep terrain, he hits the blood trail. He then looks down the basin and spots the mortally wounded buck. Dwight approaches his buck carefully, even though it appears finished. Congratulations all around as Dale and Mike finally make their way to Dwight.
Long ways. I'll tell you.
Yes.
It can ruin a hunt.
Somebody said this wasn't a very big deer, but
Bow hunting mule deer bucks in open country is very challenging, requiring the hunter to hone his skills to perfection. However, the satisfaction of taking an open country buck with a bow under such conditions is personally very rewarding and fully worth the effort. Now we move to the breaks between the Salmon and Snake Rivers in northern Idaho. Truly a magnificent piece of wild country. It holds good populations of big muley bucks, elk, and bear. The highest ridges are only 2,500 to 3,500 feet in elevation, but the many draws and basins are very steep and studded with rocky faces and outcroppings. In fact, the number 11 record book mule deer in the world came from this country. Nowhere have the forces of wind, water, and glacial ice produced a more spectacular piece of country. This country is best hunted using a modified version of still hunting and using good optics. The main crest ridges and off-shooting secondary or finger ridges are walked slowly. Periodically and cautiously, so as not to silhouette oneself on the side basins and down slopes of the finger ridges are glassed. Look at the following sequence carefully. It will demonstrate why good optics are important and test your ability to spot game quickly. Can you see the deer? Now, can you see the deer? Now? Now? Suddenly, there he is. Early in the day, the big bucks can be found feeding, but as the day warms, they will be found bedded in a favorite patch of shaded brush or under a secluded rock outcropping. There are literally dozens of vantage points during the day that a hunter can discreetly examine. That's what makes hunting the salmon breaks so exciting. One never knows what he'll find in the next binocular view. You know Mr. Big is there, maybe just over in the next brush patch. There is always that chance that you could be staring at a rack that will score over 195 Boone and Crockett points. George Batis has hunted the Salmon River breaks for years and has seen and taken many good bucks. He will guide Stu Turner and Rod Hubner into the canyons in search of trophy bucks. George, using the spotting scope and rod, set up to glass the basin. They keep a strong wind in their faces and keep low so as not to expose their body outlines on the horizon. They almost immediately spot a lone buck bedded in the brush in the bottom of the basin and begin the stalk.
Let's go right down around these rocks. Now there's something. Here we are stalking this buck. Look at that herd of elk on the hillside right there. Look at him. Let's take a quick look from right here. That's a nice bull. That one up there by that, right on the edge of the shadow, that's a nice big bull. Look at him. That's one of the neat things about this Snake River, Salmon River country. We've got bear out here. We saw that bear on the way out this morning, and now these elk, and we got this buck to go get here, so let's sneak around the hill. About 300 yards. You could take him from here, and he's screened by brush. Here, Rod, we're about 200 yards from him here now. Let's take your pack out, and we'll lay it down there, and we're gonna crawl out. You see that rock on the right? The one with a little bit of red on it? Yeah, okay. Okay, just beyond that, stay to the side here. And you see that other green rock beyond it? Okay, you want to get down low and just push the pack ahead of you. Now hold it in your left hand and crawl. Just up in there now. Do you know where it is? Okay, just keep easy your hand there.
Rod, using extreme patience, sets up for his shot. He sights in and squeezes the trigger. The buck, mortally shot through the lungs, lies down in the brush. Rod finishes him with a second shot.
That was an excellent stalk and a nice buck. Go find him. Yeah, that's a nice buck, Rod. Yeah. Yeah, he's about 145 or so. That's a nice buck. You got a nice shot on him, too. Perfect shot right there. Well, congratulations.
Thanks, George.
All right.
Interesting hunt.
That's a Salmon River mule there. You made good time going up. Made good time going up that ridge. All those marathons you've been running all summer. This trail goes right in. Okay, now lay it on the side. Okay, I'll bring up the rear here. Let's go, Mule.
The next day, it's Stu's turn. He and George have located a big 3-point, bedded in a tiny basin in which he has probably lived all summer. He is concealed very well, and the shot will be difficult.
Draw back there, and then we'll just continue to watch these little tiny draws as we work right back down river, okay? Okay, let's move over there now. Be careful you don't roll any rocks and keep a low profile, all right? You're shooting at 7mm Weatherby? Yeah. All right, it's right at 250, so you're sighted 3 inches high at 100. Yep. Hold it right there on the edge of the grass and squeeze very carefully. Just wait a minute now, wait a minute. Got it. Get him again. Here. He's coming out. He's coming out. He's coming out of the brush. He's coming out. There you go. He's down. Good shoot.
Thank you.
He's down.
Yeah, he's dead.
He's down.
He's trying, dude. He's dead. I hit him in the shoulder.
Yeah, he's down.
No,
He's down.
he's yeah.
Boy, now that was quite a deal. All right.
Hey, how about that?
Good shoot.
Master guide.
Well, that buck was hidden so well.
Oh, he was
I couldn't
perfectly
believe it.
camoed in there.
I mean, how long have we been sitting here looking in this basin?
Yeah.
That's all
I had
right.
about this much of him to shoot at.
You know, I looked at that.
Just that
I looked
back.
at him and I could see his body, and then the sun changed a little. And how long have we been here? Been here forever. Nice shot.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Stu and George pick their way down the slope from the rocky point where the shot was made.
Look at that guy. All right.
You see the blood where he rolled right down the hill.
All right. Look at that. Look at that guy. Super. Yeah, he's
Big, long tines.
See, it's 3x3. We have quite a few of these in the gene pool in this area. And I guess if you're managing for trophy quality, you want to take these bucks out of the gene pools.
They don't breed and reproduce. And
Yeah, because see, this buck, he'll never be a 4-point. He'll always be a 3x3.
Oh, he's plenty big one though.
But he's a dandy.
Really pretty.
Well, Stu,
Big old white face buck.
you've been waiting for one of those for a long
A
time.
lot of years.
Congratulations.
Thank
You had a
you.
beautiful shot, too, from right there.
Oh yeah.
There's a very steep
Having
downhill.
field dressed Stu's deer and while waiting for Rod to return with the mules, George and Stu reflect on the country and their hunt.
This is your first time to hunt the Salmon River Breaks, Stu?
Yeah.
This is really a neat geological area. We have the Snake River down here, and then the Salmon River's on back over here. Do you have any idea how this was formed?
Yes, George, this area has a number of main influences, primarily volcanic rock in origin, and then the effects of tens of thousands of years of glaciation and erosive power of water has formed these tremendous canyons here. You can see that horizontal band of basalt, that outcropping right there. That seems to be a favorite place for the deer to bed. Provides them protection, and it also does an excellent job of hiding them. They get up in the shadows right at the base.
This is wonderful country, Stu, to hunt if you enjoy open country mule deer hunting. You'll notice how we've been coming across here this morning through these little different basins. It gives you an opportunity to glass each basin as you go, and we've been doing that all morning. And you can just move from one to the other. Now, as we were talking about these basalt outcroppings, the deer will bed in those, underneath those rock outcroppings, and sometimes they'll have 2 or 3 beds. And as the sun changes its position in the sky, those deer will move. They'll move from one side to the other, and so they can stay in a nice cool shade. The objective of the hunter is to use a good glass, a good optical glass, good binoculars, and be able to spot those deer. Stu, as we've seen, the country has all kinds of
of different game animals and so on. You saw that coyote this morning. Remember we saw that one?
Oh yeah.
You notice how he was sneaking along that rim rock? That's what makes this country so wonderful to hunt. You're just like an old coyote. You just sneak along, peek from one little basin into the next, and pretty soon, bingo, there's that big buck.
Yeah.
Come on, Judy. Almost the top here, babe. Pick your way through those rocks. Atta girl. Come on, Jackson. We'll be home with the oats pretty soon. Yeah, we'll get a big bucket of oats tonight. You earned it today, you guys. How you doing, Jackson? Atta girl. Right up through here. We'll go right through the notch. Oh, Jackson. Oh, girl. Yeah. Jackson, buddy, look at that sunset. There's nothing else like it in the world. Let's go home.
Now, to show another side of the hunting ethic. There's absolutely nothing in the rule book which says every deer you see must be shot. As you mature as a sportsman, you may find a preference to harvest larger antlered animals. 2 bucks are bedded just behind these bushes in a small depression. Really, the ability to pass over younger, smaller bucks in favor of older, bigger-racked, mature bucks is a good, comfortable feeling. As these deer rise and are vulnerable, George and his young hunter Curtis elect to do just that and watch them run away. We now move to western Montana. Hunting mule deer in the intermountain regions of the Rocky Mountains is an exercise in diversity. Depending on the time of year and the nature of the particular type of country being hunted. The country generally is made up of shrub-covered or wooded foothills and forested mountains. The highest elevations are a tundra-like environment. Owing to the steepness of the habitat, elevation, and climate, there are a wide variety of habitat types. In general, mule deer, weather permitting, tend to use higher elevations. Hunting in October can be very different than a late November hunt, even though it's in the same area. For instance, here is a view of a basin at 6,000 feet the second week in October. The weather is seasonable and the hunting is comfortable. This is the same basin the third week of November during the hunting season. Deep snow and cold weather can make hunting the Rockies difficult and uncomfortable, but snow can also be an ally, making seeing and tracking deer much easier. Also, the rut and snow usually come at the same time. The big bucks are much more vulnerable to being hunted then. They move about the country day and night, and mentally are preoccupied with locating, courting, and breeding does. The Rockies in winter are stunningly beautiful, but potentially dangerous. Caution should be taken to guard against becoming lost and the prevention of hypothermia. There are numbers of books and tapes discussing this important subject available, as well as pamphlets and other literature from public agencies. Winter is also tough on deer. As the snow deepens and the temperature becomes even colder, the deer must feed more often and move around more to maintain body condition and warmth. During the periodic high-pressure systems which occur with regularity, the deer seek open areas to soak up the sun's warmth. They are much easier to locate during these periods of exposure. Opening day of Montana's 1986 hunting season, October 26th, was unseasonably mild. Ed Wolf and his 15-year-old son Scott set up a camp in a remote basement in the western Montana wilderness.
Well, Potsy's opening day of the 1986.
The area is noted particularly for big muley bucks and also has excellent bear hunting. Even though the good weather would enable them to penetrate into the highest, most remote pockets, the hunting would be difficult, especially since the rut was more than 2 weeks away. The deer would still be living in their summer habits, that is, retiring early, just at daylight to the deep timber, or staying on high ridges with a good view to bed for the day, and not reappear until night or after dark. Still hunting or glassing bedding areas would likely be the best hunting methods considering the weather and country. This is a particularly difficult way to hunt, requiring much patience and very good knowledge of the country being hunted. Anticipating where the deer might be is helpful. Because Scott is a young hunter, Ed passes on some tips gained through his hunting experiences.
Scott, what I normally do, and you can make your own decision on this when you see it both ways, is when I'm not in where there's game, or I'm going down a steep gully, or I'm going through a creek or something, particularly you want to make sure you don't have a cartridge in the chamber. And what I do, you notice the safety is off. And I'll open the chamber here, select the belt so there's not a cartridge in the chamber. They're all down in the magazine. Yeah. Now you can hunt that way if you want. Safety's off. There's nothing in the chamber. However, when you see a deer, you've got to do this. Put a round in the chamber. You're ready to shoot. But that amount of motion, that sound might lose the deer for you. Okay? So what I normally do is hunt with the rounds down in the magazine like this. But if I'm not in real steep country or I'm close to game, I think I'm going to get into something, I'll go ahead and chamber it around, put the safety on, and I'll hunt with the live round in the chamber with the safety on. So all I've got to do is come up, flip that safety off, and I'm ready to go. But I don't do that unless I'm close to game or I'm anticipating a shot. Okay. Scott, one thing too I wanted to mention to you, is watching the wind, and you'll notice here in my swivel I've got some yarn and some dental floss. And so you've always got to watch that wind because that's our most acute sense of defense is their sense of smell. So you always want to be aware of where the wind's blowing. Okay? Another thing I wanted to tell you about is this lodgepole we have here, this vertical lodgepole. You want to kind of get down low and look for horizontal back of a deer, for instance, let's say, against the vertical of the trees. Okay? And remember, you're not probably going to see the entire animal. You're going to see parts of it, like an ear, or a leg, or a rope patch, or something like that. So look for parts, look for horizontal against those vertical trees.
Because the mountain country is rugged and thickly vegetated, most often, as Ed mentioned, only parts of animals will be visible. Here are some examples. Just a hint of this buck's antlers show above the brush. Look for the lighter contrast areas of throat and rump patches. Look through and beyond the brush and grass right in front of you. Motionless deer are almost invisible. Watch for any kind of motion. At a distance, this buck could almost pass for a rock.
You can walk beside me.
Now, let's rejoin Ed and Scott on their hunt.
Pot's not right up on this ridge is a little basin. And we're going to go up here and work this basin and glass it for at least 45 minutes. I'll show you how we do that. We're going to be very careful when we top out on this ridge. Stay low now, we're just about to top out. Come on, out my lap now, lay your gun down.
rocks over there. Now don't move too much. See those rim rocks over there? They like to bed in the shade of those rocks. Right, those little deeper pockets in the shade this time of the day.
Scott, look at this rub. Lodgepole pine here.
Well, what would do this? Would be an elk or a deer?
Scott, probably. This tree's only 3.5 feet tall, and it's only about 1.5 inches in diameter, so most likely this is going to be a deer rub because of the smaller tree. Elk normally want to rub a little higher, a little bit bigger type tree, so probably these mules that we've been chasing around here doing it. It's nice and fresh. The bark's freshly rubbed, there's sap coming out of it. Looks, we know they're in here.
Ed and Scott were unsuccessful on the early season hunt, but continued hunting on into mid-November.
Underneath the tree, right over the ridge.
Okay, all right. All right, go up there. Take your pack off. Slide your pack ahead. Yeah, take a rest on your back. Have you got your breath okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Is he a good buck?
Yeah.
Okay. He's bedded.
Yeah, underneath the tree.
Okay, all right. Go ahead. Ease your back ahead. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Slowly. That's it. Easy, easy. Okay. Get in a prone position.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got
Okay.
it. We rolled down the hill.
I was watching back there. He's right in his bed there, and he rolled down the hill. Great. Well, congratulations, pal. It's been a long year.
Yeah.
A little bit of work paid off. Getting up at 5 o'clock this morning.
Yeah.
I check your gun, make sure where your shell's at. He's a nice 4-point. Very good. Everything okay? All right. Go to him. I'll be over. I'll get your pack.
Okay.
Go ahead. It paid off. A lot of hard work.
Yeah.
You rolled right off the hill.
All right. Come on, Dad. Come on. He's dead. Come on, Dad. Come on. Hurry up.
Ed and Scott share the success of a hunt that started in late October in this same high basin. Each year, more than 12 million hunters in the United States go deer hunting. Many share experiences of a lifetime with good friends or a son or daughter. Most share an appreciation for the deer and the chance to escape life's pressures. Most Americans today are wrapped up in lives involving high-rise buildings, tight schedules, and the other multitudes of social pressures that go along with civilized society. Deer, on the other hand, represent a small piece of our wilderness heritage. Mule deer would rank high on any computated list of popular and desirable animal species in North America by hunters and non-hunters alike. With this in mind, we all need to realize that all forms of human activity which alter deer habitat are detrimental to deer populations. Pure and simple, deer numbers in the final analysis are linked to the quality and quantity of habitat, particularly in the case of mule deer on their winter range. In the final analysis, it is you and me, each one of us individually, making a commitment to preserve our wildlife resource. It is a precious resource which we cannot afford to squander. We owe no less to the animals, ourselves, and our children.